Hello, part two. I was going to leave it there for a while, but I hadn't finished ranting, so I go straight into part two. Give you a slight change of view. I know it's not the best view. It's a bit of a sea view, but it's kind of spoiled a little bit by the things in front of it. But the reason I'm not focusing the camera on me like I usually do is because I'm in a state of disarray. I'm hanging out on the weekend and I'm kind of not scrubbed up, so I didn't want to inflict that upon you. So I started to talk about how really helpful, really kind, really warm, really welcoming the Kiwi people are, and I kind of said that can be perceived as intrusive by Brits, probably a lot of Westerners. Now, this is going to be slightly annoying because I'm going to quote a book here, and I can't remember the source of the book, but I did a little bit of work in Sierra Leone in West Africa. With an agency, and while I was there, they kindly lent me a couple of books to read about culture differences. Somebody's waving at the camera, and I'll see if I can track this book down and this author and give them due credit. I like to give credit where it's due, but it was a book that spoke in very kind of simplistic terms, but kind of was quite clear that that's what they were doing, and it explained that there are broadly speaking, two different culture types, hot climate culture and cold climate culture, that are very different, and that can sometimes account for diplomatic difficulties and conflict and things like that. So what they said is the cold weather or cold climate people tend to be very down to business, and they tend to be much more individualistically focused. There's more personal space between people. Individuality is valued more. People like their own space, their own privacy, more distance, effectively, and a number of other kind of differences as well. Whereas hot climate people are much more communal. They like to do things together. So there's less demand for privacy and distance. So for example, in hot climate cultures, it's kind of a come one, come all kind of culture. That often, if somebody goes somewhere, they wouldn't dream of going on their own. They just, almost literally bring the whole family. Everyone would kind of come along. And I kind of think of an example. I remember this is in Turkey, some Mediterranean culture, which is a hot culture, hot climate culture. That I was on holiday there once and used the cab a few times, and quite a few times the cab driver's brother was just sitting in the back of the cab, just coming along for the ride. Which you just wouldn't get in a kind of a Western kind of climate culture or a cold climate culture. And the other thing with hot climate cultures is people like more small talk, and before they do business they like to engage personally. So they'll people will talk about their children and things like that more. So people are much more and here I'd say Aotearoa, I'd say, although it's been kind of taken over by a load of cold climate people, the culture I would say is noticeably more hot climate. So people are much more forthcoming. They talk more. That's been a kind of a big surprise for me, particularly for kind of things at work. Because I'm kind of, it'd be frowned upon really to engage in too much sort of conversation at work in the UK. But people are very chatty, over here, and people are much more forthcoming with information. They'll share things more widely. They'll share more personal information. They'll tell you more about their history, where they come from, and even the Pakeha people of New Zealand will tell you about their whakapapa, even though they might not use the word whakapapa. And this more communal thing of people doing things together. So that's really interesting, and I like that. I do like the. I kind of struggle with it sometimes because being slightly Aspergic, I kind of I probably am quite standoffish in many ways. I like a lot of personal space, and I can find a lot of personal contact quite wearing. So even though it's really friendly and I enjoy the friendliness, I need to withdraw. So and you can just go for a walk here and people will stop and talk to you and things like that. So that's a kind of a big difference. And they talk about this more with the Maori people. I mean, one of the things, because I'm in the healthcare in the mental health and social care field. And one of the things that that's kind of, there's a big kind of agenda for education in understanding Maori values more. And one of the things that is probably most striking about when it comes to mental health care and things like that is recognising differences, so you don't impose values or expect values from people that aren't endemic to them. So for example, one of the big things there, and I mentioned this is the difference between Brits and Kiwis, but this is also another degree of difference between Kiwi Pakeha and Kiwi Maori, in that with Kiwi Maori, individualism is even less valued. And for example, it's much more common for people to take family members to doctor's appointments and things like that. So one of the kind of, in kind of mental health, one of the things that's often used as a kind of benchmark for good mental health is kind of, individuality, individuation and independence and autonomy and all that kind of thing. They're all signs of good, healthy mental functioning in Western societies. But actually in a Maori culture, it's less important. Community is more important. And there's a model which is called a Maori model of health, which is the four walls. So it's the four walls which hold up a house. And I didn't prepare this, so I may not recall all these exactly. But from memory, I think it's physical health, mental health, spirituality, and community. And they use the word whānau, which means family, but it kind of also has the connotation of extended family and friends and community and stuff. So that's another difference. Yeah. So that kind of ends that little kind of chunk, really. And because this isn't planned and is all kind of spontaneous, a couple of other practical things, completely at random. Another, which I think is a great thing about this country, is I have become like the Queen, and I haven't actually had cash about my person, as in notes and coins, for months, because almost everywhere accepts card payments. You can get in a taxi and pay a card payment. You can buy small items with a card. So in the UK, often there's like a £5 limit, isn't there? And if you want to use your card for anything under that, you get this sort of surcharge. So if I'll literally go into a shop for some sweeties, and we'll come back to shops and sweeties in a short moment, and just buy a Mars bar or the equivalent, and I get the card out. It's fantastic, so I don't have to constantly think about going to cash points and getting cash. That's another thing. So sweeties or sweets in Aotearoa are known as lollies. They also have lollipops, but lollipops are the same as lollipops are in the UK, but lollies refers to all sweets. And convenience stores, or what in my day, and I'm showing my age now, used to be called corner shops, even when they went on the corner, are known as dairies, which is kind of interesting, because I used to live near Dartmoor, near a place called Lustley, and the local village shop there was known as the Dairy, so that's kind of strange. So a dairy is a local kind of convenience store, so that's another kind of little difference there. So really big things and small things. I'm going to just basically spit out as many interesting and useful facts about the differences in culture, the differences in how things are done as possible. So what else? Just another random thing. Just see the road here, quite wide. Parking on either side, but also very wide. In the UK, the road wouldn't be anywhere near that wide. The roads are great here. Well, they are and they're not. Let's talk about roads. I know I said I wouldn't do anything boring, but we'll make it interesting, I promise you. So the roads here are really wide. Where I live, there's loads of cycle lanes as well, which is fantastic. Where there aren't cycle lanes, you have to be really careful because there's a really high camber on the roads. So if you're cycling when there's no cycle lane, there's like a real kind of curved trench at the side of the road that you could your wheel could slip into and you could come across quite easily. And certainly in this area, I think that's to accommodate the really heavy rain that we get here. But the bad side about roads, certainly in this area, and I can only really talk for this area because I haven't had much opportunity to travel, so I'm in the Taranaki area. There are almost no roundabouts. Roundabouts are few and far between, and it's really dangerous at some of the junctions. It's really difficult to actually get out of a junction in some places, and you get quite major roads sometimes, intersecting and stuff. So they do have a lot of motoring fatalities here, which is a real shame. Also, they have lots of level crossings. They haven't got many railways, but they've got lots of level crossings, and the level crossings aren't very well marked. In the UK, if you get anywhere near a level crossing, it's like, there's no way you can notice. There's flashing lights, and sirens and hooters and large signs and bells and, men in fluorescent jackets shouting at you. Here, you could very easily kind of overlook a level crossing, and people do, and lots of people get killed on them every year. So as in level crossings, as in railway crossings on the road. And the other thing is, while Kiwis are really kind, generous, and generally quite easygoing people, their shadow side emerges when they get in a car, and they are very impatient drivers. And it's kind of weird because the population is very low. Certainly where I live, there's nothing on the road, but people stress about what is on the road, and they will. I live in they call it a city, but it's a town really, by British standards, and you never really held up in any of the traffic, but people will say things like, there's a bit of a hold up on such and such, and they'll think about which route they're going to take really carefully before they get in their cars, because they don't want to be held up by the traffic. And God help you if you slow down a little bit in front of it with a car behind you. They're very quick on hooting the horn, a bit like Italians in that respect. So the other thing as well is they're quite prone to tailgating. So I think that's one of the they kind of scratch their heads a little bit really about why have we got so many road fatalities. And I think if you could actually put roundabouts in and kind of encourage people not to tailgate, then actually you'd probably cut that at least in half, really. But the roads generally are good. People tell me that there's lots of unpaved roads in the kind of more remote places where it's just kind of grit. I've not actually encountered any of those yet. All the roads that have been on have been really well surfaced. And the thing I really, really love, this is a brilliant thing about New Zealand roads, is as you approach bends, they have signs that tell you the recommended speed limit for approaching that bend. And God, does that make driving so much easier. You could just takes all the pressure out of driving. And another thing which makes driving easier, it took me a while to adjust to this, but nearly everybody drives an automatic here, whereas in the UK people are deeply suspicious of automatics. Here they just think, yeah, great, and having been really quite scared of driving an automatic, because I grew up with all kinds of horror stories about, you don't want to drive an automatic, they're terribly dangerous. They make it really, really easy. So if you're on a long journey and the road's good and you're in an automatic, I don't know if you can see that butterfly there. There's a monarch butterfly. Hoping he comes this way. I can actually show you something of interest. So yeah, driving can be great unless you come to a junction, and then that can be quite stressful because you're waiting some time before you can get out, and you have to kind of nip out really quickly to get in between there. Not that there's a lot of traffic, but if it's a fairly major road and there's no roundabout, that adds to a little bit of stress. So more roundabouts, please. And other than that, I realise I've gone on for far too long. This is another long one because I'm rambling away. I will no doubt meet you again for a part 3. It might not be immediate, but we'll come back and talk a bit more. Any questions, bung them in the comments below, and I will talk to you soon. Rangimarie again.